Welcome to this explainer. Imagine, for just a second, getting a military order during World War II and following it so faithfully, with such intense dedication, that you actually keep obeying it for almost 3 decades after the war officially ended. I mean, it literally sounds like the plot of a Hollywood movie, right? Well, today we are unpacking the absolute wild, incredible true story of Hiroo Onoda. It's a journey that really messes with our whole understanding of duty, reality, and isolation. This is without a doubt one of the most unbelievable true stories in all of military history. Let's dive right in. 30. Just take a second to really process that number. 30 years. That is just a massive, mind-boggling scale of time. I mean, think about how much your life or the whole world changes in 3 decades. Now imagine being completely lost in time for that entire stretch. Imagine fighting a war that literally everyone else on the planet has moved on from. So how in the world does someone get trapped in a phantom war for 30 whole years? Let's figure it out. Section 1. The Unbreakable Order. Let's head back to 1944 to see exactly how this whole thing kicked off. Okay, so meet Hiroo Onoda. He was a Japanese intelligence officer deployed to the Philippines to gather information and sabotage enemy operations. But here is where things get interesting. It was the final part of his instructions that completely sealed his fate. His commanding officer told him, never surrender unless personally ordered. So, the crucial point is, as an intelligence officer trained in unconventional warfare, Onoda took this completely to heart. This single sentence, it essentially became the psychological trap that held him captive for decades. It was an absolute overriding directive that left zero room for interpretation. Then, in 1945, the inevitable happens. American forces capture the island, and soon after, Japan officially surrenders. Millions of people around the globe are out in the streets, celebrating the end of the bloodiest conflict in human history. But Onoda? No way. He completely refuses to believe it. American aircraft literally flew over the jungle, dropping thousands of leaflets announcing Japan's surrender. But in this tragic display of confirmation bias, Onoda's training just took over. He looked at those leaflets and dismissed them as clever enemy tricks designed to capture him. In his mind, the war was still very much alive and kicking. Section 2. The Endless Jungle War. You see, he couldn't just sit around. In his head, he was a soldier on active duty. So he and a small handful of other soldiers retreated deep into the harsh Philippine jungle. And his daily reality became this absolutely relentless, terrifying survival routine. We're talking foraging for bananas, hacking down coconuts, and literally stealing rice from local farmers just to stay alive. But remember, he wasn't just surviving like a castaway. He was operating as a soldier. He carried out regular military patrols, he was constantly cleaning his rifle to make sure it was fully functional, and he meticulously maintained his military uniform. He was enforcing absolute, rigid military discipline in the middle of nowhere, just waiting for his commander to return. Now, over the decades, the brutal reality of the jungle took a devastating toll on his squad. He didn't start this journey alone, right? But as the years dragged on, the psychological and physical strain really compounded. One companion eventually gave up and surrendered. Others were tragically killed in local skirmishes. So ultimately, Onoda was left completely, utterly isolated. He literally became a one-man army. And he was clinging to the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. You know, feeling like he'd already sacrificed so much, he just had to continue the mission all by himself, up until a fateful encounter in 1974. Section 3. A Changing World. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the incredible contrast between Onoda's reality and the outside world. It is just staggering to think about. While Onoda was basically frozen in time, trapped mentally and physically in 1944, fighting a phantom war in the mud and the rain, humanity was experiencing explosive, unprecedented progress. I mean, television became a common household item. Humans literally landed on the moon. And Japan, the very country Onoda was out there fighting for, completely rebuilt from the ashes of World War II into one of the top, most powerful economies on the globe. He missed all of it, every single bit of it, locked away in an isolated reality of his own making. Meanwhile, back in that hyper-modernized Japan, his family had long since mourned him. They firmly believed he had died decades ago. Yet every now and then, these bizarre occasional rumors would trickle out of the Philippines. Just little whispers suggesting that a mysterious wild Japanese soldier was still hiding out and fighting in the jungle. But separating those rumors from reality and actually penetrating the dense, massive psychological walls Onoda had built, that took decades. Section 4. The Final Surrender. How on earth do you convince a man who has completely rejected reality for 30 years that the war is actually over. Well, the path to his surrender required a highly specific, almost surreal sequence of events to finally break through his deeply entrenched beliefs. First, in 1974, a young Japanese explorer named Norio Suzuki set out, and, unbelievably, actually found Onoda. But Onoda, staying absolutely true to his unbreakable order from 1944, flat out refused to surrender to Suzuki. He insisted, "I will only obey a direct order from my original commander." So Suzuki had to travel all the way back to Japan, track down Onoda's former commanding officer, who was an old man by this point, and bring him all the way back to the Philippines. And it was only when this former officer officially read the orders relieving him of duty, nearly 30 years after the war ended, that Onoda finally lowered his weapon. He walked out of the jungle and completely astounded the world. I mean, his uniform was worn to threads but still totally recognizable, and incredibly, his rifle was still fully functional. When Onoda finally emerged, the world was deeply, deeply divided on his legacy. On one hand, many people admired him. They saw him as the ultimate symbol of unwavering discipline, courage, and just sheer loyalty to his country. But on the other side, he was viewed as a deeply tragic victim of blind obedience, a man who suffered unimaginable sacrifice simply because the truth was hidden behind his own stubborn belief. And this brilliantly illustrates how the exact same set of incredible facts can be interpreted in totally different ways, depending on how we process duty versus delusion. Now, after surviving the jungle for 30 years, Onoda faced a new battle, surviving the modern world. He returned to Japan to absolute global astonishment. But just try to imagine being dropped into a high-tech society after 30 years in the literal wilderness. The psychological shock must have been immense. He profoundly struggled to adapt to this modern, loud, super fast-paced life. Seeking a much simpler existence, he actually packed up and spent several years living in Brazil before eventually making his peace with it all and returning home to Japan for good. Which brings us to the real core of this explainer. Hiroo Onoda's 30-year war is this incredible reminder that duty can inspire awe, but it can also exact a terrible, terrible price. So, as you process this remarkable slice of history, I want you to ask yourself, is this the ultimate symbol of courage or the tragic cost of blind obedience? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.